Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show, and if you are an avid listener of the show, you will have noticed that the intro has now changed and we are no longer sponsored by the HMO Property Show, but we are now sponsored by the Co-Living Collective. And in this podcast today, we're going to talk about what the Co-Living Collective is, why we made it, why we brought it in, and more importantly, what this gentleman's role is going to be, and his wife's role and what hers is going to be in helping us grow the Co-Living Collective. It's my good friend from episode 44 and the the Co-Living Collective's new strategic growth specialist. It's Mr. Iain Shields.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome back, my friend.
Yeah, feels good to be back in the seat.
Mate, we'll have to get Alison in one day as well.
Yes, well, she speaks better than me and she looks better than me as well, so you've got both fronts covered.
Let's just stop this now, mate. We'll go again.
Yeah, let's get Alison.
So the Co-Living Collective, Iain, me and you, we've known each other, as we said in episode 44, we've known each other since about 2016, 2017. There was always some synergy there. We were always going to do something together because of our passion for trying to fix this housing system that we're stuck in at the minute. In the last episode, we spoke about the HMO, the housing continuum, and the different styles of housing which are missing. And today we're going to talk about a little bit of that as well, but we want to delve into SDA, SIL housing, and the spider's web, which is what we need to do to fill these houses, and how we can find participants and quality SIL providers as well, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So the Co-Living Collective, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty phenomenal. I think I said it actually when I was in for that last episode. I really like what you do. I really like the potential there is in what you do. I've seen a rapid growth in what you do in terms of people taking up the solutions that you provide. I think in terms of co-living, just generally, when there's a housing crisis that affects the whole housing ecosystem, in particular the affordable housing component of that, the affordable housing crisis, which a lot of people refer to as the housing affordability crisis, but I like to think of the rental affordability housing crisis. And I think that the co-living solutions that you provide are just such a unique there's such a unique suite of offerings that I just got really excited to come in and work with you all as well. And having met the team at the Co-Living Collective, it's a pretty phenomenal team with a wide varying group of people, different backgrounds, different areas of skills, and it's just a exciting place to be.
I feel like you've known everyone for ages. You kind of just swan around the office, chatting with everybody.
Yeah.
It's a nice, happy place, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a social chameleon anyway, but I think everybody here is, and I think everybody brings something to the table. And I think from that first strategy planning session that you invited me to, I just thought everybody offered so much value that it just felt like a really exciting place to be. And it's been a little while since I felt like that. I've been doing some work at some really great organisations and leading my own social enterprise, and I felt really excited about all of that. But I think for the first time ever, I felt excited about offering something that was really tangible to people right now as a solution to the housing crisis.
It's giving me goosebumps.
Yeah.
I think when you're in the trenches all day, every day, you can't see the wood for the tree sometimes, can you? So to hear somebody like you say what you've just said there, it means a lot.
Yeah. Well, for a long time, working on Home Hub and still working on Home Hub, I get that overarching look at housing need, housing supply, where is the affordable housing rental crisis, gaps and opportunities. And I think that's where that stuff's great, that stuff's fantastic, and you can use a lot of that stuff for advocacy, lobbying. You can try and connect different housing pathways and options to people that need it. And I still remain really excited about all of that stuff, and that's going in a really exciting tangent as well, which I'm a part of. But I think here right now, you guys are already offering an amazing suite of solutions to people that need housing. And so, yeah, it's one thing talking about it and looking at it and thinking, you know, how do you design certain solutions? It's another thing actually being part of the delivery of those solutions as well. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. Like, they both complement each other, and it's quite exciting.
Yeah. And we took you out to some of the sites, some of the new builds we were building as well. What do you think of them? Yeah,
phenomenal. Really great product. In particular, the SDA product was really, really exciting. Having worked with Home Hub for a little while, I actually never really thought I would move into SDA housing as an area of kind of expertise that I've got. I would never really kind of move into helping people solve SDA type problems, even though I'm really driven about participant outcomes. My wife, Alison, is doing a bit of consulting with you at the moment and helping you to try and think about what does that SDA market look like and how do you match to participants. And having been out to those homes, I think offering a quality SDA home for people to live in, and also for seal providers to want to work with you on, is absolutely front and centre of mind. And so I felt really comfortable actually asking Alison and me to see if we wanted to influence that SDA kind of market, really. I meet a lot of providers through the Home Hub work, and I see a lot of people who need SDA housing and want to provide really good participant outcomes. But I also know the pitfalls of developers, builders who don't know the disability industry and how they maybe don't approach the seal providers in the right way, how they don't understand how to work with support coordinators, seal participants, seal providers, OTs, and let alone participants and their families. Whereas for you guys, I think Alice and I have seen you actually directly working with participants, families, seal providers, and I think it made us feel really comfortable to say, yeah, you know, we're going to come into the Co-Living Collective and help you grow your business. And one of those things for Alison was to really feel comfortable helping you grow that SDA offering. And actually the design of the house is pretty phenomenal, you know, to have two bedrooms and an overnight, you know, place for the seal provider and the support providers, but to have a really nice ensuite bedroom, you know, some luxury space. It's not just a cupboard where you have a desk and you work from. And I think for years now, it's safe to say that the report came out recently, NDIS report, Commonwealth Inquiry came out, that group homes for a long time, there's been some issues and some challenges. But part of that sometimes I think is they're also, whilst they're not always the most suitable place to live for groups of people with disability, actually making smaller homes for people to choose to live in, but also making them a great place to work, to support people. Yeah. Because one of the things that I'm always conscious of, particularly for seal providers and disability support workers, is that actually community service providers, community service workers, they're actually average income jobs. You know, that people aren't paid handsomely to support other people to successfully live in the community. And I
tip my hat to them because, the amount of work they do. Yeah. Man, I mean...
Specialist.
Yeah. I mean, I look at the care my dad used to get before he passed away, that my sister gets now. She's in full-time care. Like, just round-the-clock care, but the people that care for them just have heart. Yes. They wear the heart on the sleeve, and like they're there all day, every day, providing care, man. And like you say, it's not the best paid job in the world, but they do it with heart. So,
and to have really great conditions and outcomes for participants, but also for workers, I think when you think about the need for disability industry workers, and the need to attract good people, into skillful, intelligent, compassionate, kind, empathetic people to work with people with disability, and there's a need for lots more people in the industry, we need to provide them with really great conditions. And so actually providing them a house for participants that just meets a standard isn't quite enough from an SDA perspective. And I think that's one of the things that we got really excited about in terms of what you're offering. You're offering a really superior product that I think not just goes beyond the standard for participants, but also for seal providers and their workers as well. And I think that's fantastic. And I know I was talking to you about, Co-Living Collective, strategic growth, when thinking about who is suffering from the affordable rental crisis, the essential workers that make life go round, that make society function, your nurses, your paramedics, your firefighters, your teachers, your childcare workers, your disability support workers, your aged care workers. A report came out this year for Anglicare WA, a rental affordability snapshot, that said that only 6 properties were affordable for people in WA out of 45,000 nationally. Only 6 homes in WA were affordable for that cohort of middle income workers. So
It's crazy, isn't it?
well, when I was thinking about the co-living collective and what you provide for the workers, and then the SDA offering for participants and workers, for me, it just feels like you're about offering quality housing solutions and products for people.
Well, I think you nailed it in our planning day when we might do the planning day. You were kind of sat there quite quiet at the front of the room, and you were like taking everything in, and then you didn't say much at all, did you? Then all of a sudden you were like, you guys kind of go beyond real estate, and we were like, oh my God, where did that come from? So we wrote it on the board, we go beyond real estate, and we're like, oh, we are having that.
Yeah, and Alison's obviously a market engagement specialist, but yeah, I think she's going to hold that against me for the rest of her life, because I think I came up with such a marketing gem there. But I honestly believe that, and having had a little bit of real estate experience, but not huge amounts, it just felt to me that you bridge a gap. You know, you're an award-winning tenancy and property management organisation. You're doing developments and buildings, and you're kind of you offer that end-to-end turnkey solution.
Yeah.
But at the end of it is this really great quality outcome that's managed by great people, and you're constantly wanting to go one more and to design an SDA home where workers get a really great environment, as well as get to enjoy participants experiencing a beyond standard product, a great home to live in. It's almost like a win-win. I just kind of sat back and just thought, wow, this is going beyond real estate. Yeah. It's really phenomenal.
The other thing you said as well is we go beyond the standard, which you touched on briefly there, like the standard of the NDIS, the minimum design standard, is actually a pretty poor outcome, isn't it? It's small, narrow passageways, small rooms, like they don't need to be big. And there's a lot of people out there building to that standard. But when you build beyond the standard and you put bigger doors in, wider passageways, bigger rooms, higher ceilings, bigger bedrooms, bigger ensuite, the outcome is, like you say, happy participants, happy still workers, because they've got more space, brighter houses to work in, easier to get to and from because they're in good places. Like it's just a win-win, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a win-win. It's a no-brainer, really, and I think it can only mean that type of expectation, that type of standard becomes an expectation in the future. That's the kind of hope for me, really. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it is the expectation in this business now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think anyone who's looking to be involved in any type of housing product, any type of solution, whether you're an investor, whether you're a partner, whether you're a tenant, you probably want to shop around for what you think is going to be suitable. And some of those things come down to location, price, and then it comes down to the quality of product. And I think you can sometimes be flexible on the other things. But for me, I think quality of product is what really should lead the way. Price then comes after. And I think in the market of things like co-living, investors can get great rates of return and offer a great solution, a great product. And I think it's the same with SDA. People can look at a price of building a house and go, oh my God, that's larger than I thought it would be. But actually, when you look at the outcomes for the participant and then you look at the yield, you kind of go, wow, I can make an incredible difference, not just to one person's life, but to multiple people's lives who may want to live together. Plus, the people that work there are going to have a really great working environment. Plus, I get to make some money at the end of it as a housing or a property investor. It's a bit of a win-win when you offer quality products.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I'd like to do today and in this podcast is debunk the spider's web, which you drew out for us as well when you came in. You kind of drew it on the whiteboard and you went, this is what it looks like at the minute, and this is where I see myself and Alison fitting in and helping fill these gaps, because it's not easy filling these houses, is it?
No, not at all. And I know we were talking about HMO, expanding, co-living collective, getting bigger, growth strategy, and Alison's worked in the disability industry historically. Yeah. And we just, after the last episode, people would know we just had a baby, and the baby's getting bigger now, just turned 1, so Alison is kind of chomping at the bit to get back to work and wants to do more, and I think she sees a real opportunity to help you just tell people about what you do, why you do it. I mean, you've touched on your own family kind of connection to why you do something, it's social purpose driven. And in this market, the SDA market, it feels like a lucrative market, but it is full of risks. So that's obviously one thing that you need to mitigate. But secondly, it's how do you stand out and tell your story, and how do you make sure that people are aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it, because you're doing it for the right reasons. And I think it's important that we tell people that. And I think that's Alison's unique kind of gift from a work perspective, is she's able to tell a narrative and expand a narrative of why people would potentially want to work with Co-Living Collective. And I think people would know Alison as not a flashy, salesman of a gold watch inside a coat, so she's not flogging things. So if Alison believes in something and I believe in something, and we're out there saying, this is a great product and these are great people, I think that's one of the ways that actually you can separate yourselves from what can be quite a difficult market with some people who are saying that they do certain things but perhaps don't deliver the best outcomes. Not the best quality homes, not the best quality partnerships, not the best quality tenancy and property management services in the long run. And I think that's, when you think about delivering housing services and housing products, that tenancy and property management role is huge. It's not just knocking up a house and then asking someone else to manage it. It's making sure that you have a really, really good end-to-end service from that perspective. And I think that's where Alison and me, knowing you haven't met the team of tenancy and property management specialists, it's exciting to know that, it's not just these people are doing the right things for the right reasons, but also they will deliver a great service.
Well, we just won the Reward for Innovation at the REWA Awards for Excellence again.
There you
2
go.
years on it, second year on the bounce. So I don't even think I've mentioned that on the podcast since we've won it. Probably just brushed over it. But we took the team out for the awards night. We all got dressed up, black tie event, and we won the Award for Innovation. So well deserved by the team. They all partied all night and turned up the next day with bad heads. But well deserved. It's been a brilliant journey to get to where we are now.
Yeah,
really good. So just so people aren't getting a little bit confused, the Co-Living Collective is going to be our overarching brand across the existing brands. So when we're speaking to government, when we're speaking to not-for-profits, when we're speaking to larger funds, when we're speaking to anybody that needs to understand that we're bigger than just one company, we're going to speak to them from the Co-Living Collective. And underneath the Co-Living Collective, we're still going to have the HMO Property Co as our development, design, delivery sort of arm. We're still going to have J&G Property Group, although we are rebranding that to Living Rooms, which is going to be our HMO Property Management arm. We're going to have Reside, which is our NDIS and SDA property management business. We're going to keep the two businesses divided for complexities around agreements and legalities and stuff like that. And then we're going to have Co-Built, our building company. So we're going to have them 4 brands underneath the Co-Living Collective. Yourself and Alison are going to be working across basically everything, aren't you? You're going to help us. You're definitely more HMO focused. I can tell that by some of the conversations we've had.
Yeah.
And I can tell Alison's more SDA focused. But together as a team, you're a power couple, aren't you? In that space.
Yeah.
Power couple in general, to be honest.
Oh wow. Thanks, Neil.
Yeah. When you're saying you're excited for joining us, we're excited that you're joining us because you and Alison bring something to the business that we don't have at the minute.
Yeah.
So I think together, you're excited that we can deliver, but we're excited that you've got the connections in the space and you can speak to them in the language that they need to be spoken in.
Yeah.
Where myself or my business partner Troy approach them, we probably approach it from a wrong angle, from a development or a builder's sort of aspect.
Yeah.
Where you can definitely connect to them properly, speak their language and explain more about what we do, the outcomes we get and the people that we've helped.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a match made in heaven.
Oh well, I think I just think generally the opportunity is really exciting, and so I think you're going to attract really interesting, passionate people. And I think Alison and I have always been social purpose driven, but we also see, real excitement in the tangible opportunity to influence very tangible solutions. So Alison's really excited working on the SDA Reside stuff. Making sure that people know who you are, what you do, why you do it. And then asking people, if you want to work with us, come and tell us, because there's a need for SEAL providers and participants and families and carers, support coordinators, OTs. There's a need for everyone in the industry who provides the participant-led process to understand who good SDA partners might be. And yes, Reside's going to be one of them, and there'll be other ones out there. But there's also a need to kind of distinguish those good providers from bad providers, which is quite challenging. But there's also the need for us to distinguish that same thing as well. There'll be good SEAL providers out there and bad SEAL providers, and there'll be SEAL providers who genuinely prioritise their participant outcomes, and there'll be providers who don't, and they use SEAL services as a way of driving a margin and hammered down on the workers' hours, etc. So I think from our perspective, we're so excited to work with people that we already know, but also a whole new area of NDIS, and just trying to make sure that participants get good outcomes more than anything. So I know Alison's really excited about that. I love the HMO side of the business. I love all of it, but the HMO stuff and the opportunities there are to scale that in a sustainable way are the things that I get excited about, particularly in some of the areas that I have worked in already when it comes to housing. So things like veterans affordable housing, veterans and families affordable housing, things like older women and affordable housing, and there's partners in those types of social and welfare service industries, if you like, sectors, that I think would be so driven and motivated, but also have the tolerance. So good providers who provide great supports to an audience of people who need access to affordable housing solutions to want to work with you. And I think that's the thing that I get really, really excited about. How do we expand HMO to include affordable housing solutions for women at risk of homelessness who are over 55, who are the fastest growing population of homelessness in the country. There's a really great video out there at the moment called It's escaped my mind now, but it's well worth watching. It was narrated by Margot Robbie, and it's a documentary. It's older women. It follows a group of older women who tell their story, follow the day of the life of, or a year in the life of, and it's a really, really great documentary. And I think there's an opportunity there for HMO to scale its business to include people like that, but do it in a way that is really driven by an understanding of the social impact measurement evaluation, and that's the bit I get really, really excited about, because you're already doing this work. I'm not bringing anything new to the table apart from let's just make sure that you genuinely measure and evaluate your social impacts, and that the investors feel like they can scale their investment partnership with you, but also understand that while I'm doing that, I'm also starting to feel good because I know what I'm doing in terms of my partnership with this organisation or group of companies achieves X, Y and Z. I don't see anyone else in WA really doing what you're doing in terms of co-living solutions. So joining a co-living collective to influence that just felt really exciting for me.
Yeah. Let's talk about the vets and the older women a little bit. And what are the sort of demographic do you think can fall into this housing continuum that isn't being helped right now, or is being helped, but there's just not enough solutions for them? So we've got veterans, which are ex-army, ex-navy. Yeah. They've come out of the forces, and I think you said that there's no support system for them when they come out of there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's huge amounts of, so they call them RSOs, registered service organisations. There's 3,000, I think, over 3,000 in Australia. So you have to register to say, I specifically want to help ex-service personnel. So there's huge amounts of support, but they tend to be started by people who want to provide very, very tangible local community solutions. I think you're developing a housing model that can scale and include veterans and their families more broadly. In WA, there's around about 375 people discharged from service per year, and their families. Yep. Some voluntarily, some involuntarily, and some are given access to supports. But the issue that I'm hearing from veterans from some co-design services that we did is that when you join the army, you leave civilian life and you go through a series of training, and you take on an identity, and it's like they purposefully push you up a mountain. Literally, you do it yourself, but we're going to push you up a mountain, and they make you and break you. But then you're up there. You're this person. This is who I am. I operate on a different level. I do different things to a lot of people. When you leave service, some people are fine, but other people have described it to me that they actually fall off a cliff, and then you don't know who you are and where you are.
Lost the purpose.
It's like you've lost your purpose, but you've also lost your ability to connect and identify with civilian life, which sounds really strange. But if you leave and you've got something like PTSD or a partial disability, the last thing you want to do is tell people that you have a disability, that you got PTSD, and that you need something like social housing or affordable rentals. So the ability to fill a form in, it's not that you don't think that you should, but you feel like you've served time, and there's sometimes the inability to know how to translate what you do and how you do it in the language into civilian life. So things like employment become difficult, and there's great organisations out there doing great employment services. But if you've been employed as a mechanic doing great things in the army, it's hard to come out and put that into a CV in civilian language. So translation of that to get a job can be difficult. And if you don't get a job and you're not getting up and going somewhere, your daily routine falls apart. If you've got PTSD or you've got a lack of identity and that becomes a struggle, you might start doing other things. It might start building up in frustration. And so the idea of going to a local council or a local government office and pulling a ticket down and filling in a social housing application, you actually look at that and go, what is going on?
Where have I come from to this?
Yeah, and so people don't do that. They go bush, or they go stay with a mate. The other thing as well is that there is the offer of really great services when people leave the military, but at the same time, people aren't always in a position to realise that. And so offering it at one point is different to offering it a year to 3 years down the line, when actually someone leaves and goes, no, I'm fine, because I've always been fine and I don't want to tell you that I'm not. But actually 2 years down the line, you know you're not fine, and you have been struggling, and you can't find housing, and your relationships are volatile, and maybe you're not able to cope. That's when you need to access help. And that's when I think these types of housing models can come in really handy, but also the types of partnerships that I think we can create to support people beyond the housing would be really fascinating. It's a similar story to older women experiencing the risk of homelessness or homelessness in general. For years, women of a certain age may have been out of the workforce, they have less super. There's a whole contextual background around why older women are at risk of becoming homeless on a rate that no one else is. But the reality is that people get to 55, 60, 70, and they don't have a huge amount of savings, they don't have a huge amount of rental history, and they can't get access to the social housing system because they own one too many things, or because of some sort of criteria issue. And so you find
also a wait list as well, isn't it?
Wait list, 4, 5, 6 years. Yep. And the minister's doing a great job at the moment of prioritising social housing. He's doing a really fantastic job, but you can't solve all the problems all at once. And so I think the minister, this is a really big complementary solution from an affordable rental housing crisis perspective to his social housing crisis perspective. And as the housing minister, he resides over all of that. So if I'm prioritising my focus on social housing and I'm looking at rental housing as well, I would be looking at you guys and, us, and saying, wow, this co-living collective, there's a bit of legs in this, and how do we support these guys in ways that I can, whilst I don't lose my focus on social housing.
The problem's huge, isn't it? I mean, if anyone wants to check it out again, go back to episode 44 and listen to what we spoke about there, because not much has changed. I mean, it was only in July that we recorded that podcast, so it's November now. Like, we're still in a pickle. There's still not enough houses. Still record people moving to the state. It's carnage out there at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, and the minister this week has announced the short-term rental accommodation policy changes. And they're really welcomed from a lot of people who work in the housing ecosystem.
$10,000 if you take your house off Airbnb and put it down for a long-term rental.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think investors looking at, how do I achieve good rates of return? What's my yield? How do I use my home really well? Co-living collective, again, is one of those organisations where that's probably Alison.
Podcast 101 rules, turn your phone off.
Turn the phone off, or just don't even bring it, and it is Alison. It's Alison.
10 press-ups after the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know if I can do 10. But yeah, I mean, investors would be, I think they should be looking at the co-living collective and saying, well, if I can't, or if I don't want it, if I'm looking for alternatives to using it on Airbnb, what would they be? Yes, I can use it as a private rental accommodation, but could I use it as a private rental accommodation but achieve a greater rate of return? Could the yield be bigger with the co-living collective rather than just as a house for one person?
Absolutely. Let's talk about the NDIS and where yourself and Alison are going to help us unpack the needle in a haystack, you called it earlier, didn't you? It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, because it's very convoluted. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of things that need to happen. So you drew us a little map out, and what we might try and do is get this printed out in Canva.
Yes.
And kind of put it as a visual on the podcast on YouTube.
Yeah.
So whilst we're down here building SDA housing, at the other end here, there's all this stuff going on, and they've kind of got to meet in the middle.
Yes.
To make it all work. And
yes.
so we've got way down here, we're building houses, we've got our investors, we're building some for ourselves. We need a SIL provider to bring us tenants, participants for these houses, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
To provide, when people move into those SDA homes, because SDA is made for people with high complex needs, and it's only 6% of the NDIS market, they'll need people to provide support, supported independent living supports. Yeah. There's lots of home and living supports generally, but one of those underneath that bracket is supported independent living. So that's help with cooking, little bits of cleaning, helping to build your capacity to live independently. Even though you may always need supports, it's actually how do we help you achieve good outcomes so that you need less and less over time, but actually that you live a good life and that you can do things as much as possible for yourself where you can, where they meet the goals in your plan. So for SDA providers, and I think one of the things that Alison's really, really excited about is connecting you to really great SIL providers. How do you develop really great SIL partnerships?
How do we know when a SIL provider is a good SIL provider? There's a lot of them out there at the minute, isn't there?
Yeah, really great question. I think there's a couple of things. There are not-for-profit providers, for-profit providers. The thing to maybe say about that as well is that historically, providers of SIL have always been not-for-profit organisations because of the way that the funding and procurement worked. So before participants had the funding directly from the government, the funding would trickle down from the Commonwealth to the state to the local government. And normally what would happen is a not-for-profit organisation whose business it was to make sure that people lived great lives in the community who were vulnerable or at risk, such as people with disability, they were given contracts based on the local area. So a local service organisation were paid to deliver great SIL services to everyone with disability in that area who needed help to live independently at home. So that's where the whole group home model came from. Those providers started to put multiple groups of people together to live independently. They'd provide some wraparound support, cooking, cleaning, etc. And then people would move in locally. So it's not to say that not-for-profit providers, the only good providers are going to be not-for-profit, or that all good providers will be not-for-profit. But what it means is it's opened up the market now for more for-profit providers. So actually, there's a lot more agility in the market now, not just from the not-for-profit organisations. Often those are really big businesses with a lot of risk, a lot of process to navigate, including boards of directors. And so there'll be great not-for-profit providers out there, but there'll also be for-profit providers out there who say, we can do things better in a more agile way. We have less bureaucracy, less red tape. We don't have to satisfy a board of directors. All we have to do is get participants good outcomes and generate a bit of a profit for ourselves to pay ourselves. So I don't think you can really say good providers will be not-for-profit or for-profit. I think it really will be about what evidence do people have in terms of how can they demonstrate to us that they have a social impact measurement and evaluation kind of plan or framework. How do they demonstrate that they genuinely do deliver great outcomes? And how many people do they have working for them? What's the skill of those people? How qualified are they? Give us some examples of what they've done recently to provide really great SIL services to people. Because as well as us wanting to do that with SIL providers, I think SIL providers are going to want us to do that as well.
Again, it's kind of like us wanting to work with you and vice versa. We're going to want to work with them, and we want them to work with us as well, so that there's just pure respect between each other, and both focused on delivering the best outcome possible for the people that live there. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll be honest, I think the majority of the time you'll recognise people or providers who will deliver great services and good products, both through the people and culture that they surround themselves in, both their staff, their participants, their organisation. But a lot of the time there'll be a lot of personal motivation as well. So similar to yourselves. And
I think this is when the for-profit organisations can potentially outperform the not-for-profits, because there's more drive, more passion, more need to deliver, more need to win and actually get the outcomes, isn't there? Where not-for-profits, they're a little bit slower, like you say, a bit more red tape, a bit more bureaucracy. But the for profits with 5 to 10 people working in them could be a lot more nimble.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's a real balance there between making sure that you can do it and you can do it well, and having the experience, the process, the red tape set up to enable that. I think that's really, really important. And also having the agility. And so I think the two sides of the market, the for-profit, not-for-profit, I see a lot of harmony in how they're working. But I think we have to see the harmony from Reside's perspective. I think one of the things Alison will be doing is really trying to connect with providers, not-for-profit and for-profit, who really want to deliver great outcomes for clients and for their workers. And they're the kind of people that I think Alison would be recommending that you partner with.
And we've been speaking to a few already, haven't we? What's the sort of feedback been like from the ones that we've spoken with?
Yeah, good. Yeah, really good. I think Alison's been working a little bit of a network. I've got a network as well. And I think we've been getting out there talking to some providers. I think the feedback has been, Alison feels like when she talks about, the product that you do, the housing. So what does the plan look like? What have you done so far? How does that work? What's the success story's been like? What's the motivation around why you're doing it and who you're doing it for? It's been really, really positive. I think one of the biggest things that Alison still gets repeatedly excited about is the product is fantastic. That's the feedback. The housing that we're creating is absolutely brilliant for people. It stands out from the market. But secondly, it's the approach, I think, is really, really key. The approach to want to work in partnership with clients, participants, seal providers, OTs, and in particular, the agility to genuinely want to build bespoke for people as and when it's suitable. So I think that's a bit of a standout, not just to go out and knock up 150 homes that meet a standard and therefore, if you build it, they will come. Actually, you're trying to work backwards and say, yes, we'll build some and hope that people will find them suitable and appropriate. But I think one of the exciting things for Alison, and one of the good bits of feedback that we've had, is that you're looking to connect with participants, families, carers, but also with support coordinators and OTs as early on as you can to build homes for people that are genuinely tailored and bespoke to people's needs. Yeah,
we've just recently connected with a family that we're building a robust property for. This is going to be one of our own personal projects. And we met the parents. We connected through somebody else that their son had funding in his plan and couldn't find anyone to build it. So through people knowing who we are and what we did, they connected us with the family, and man, they are so excited because their son's like 25. He's been living with them full time up until now, with care workers coming through the house to support the son. Yeah. And now in the next 12 months, he's going to have his own 1-bedroom robust property with around the clock caring for him, and the parents are going to have the property back, and they're going to be, they're going to have time. They're going to have time for each other, because all they've done so far is just cared for their son, which is full on. Yeah. Full on. You can see it in their eyes when they're worn out.
It's huge. Absolutely huge.
The impact this has is beyond just putting people into properties. This is huge.
Yeah. I think it's the impact you can have on not just the person with disabilities life, but also families and friends and carers. Yeah. I also think that for seal providers, it gives them it gives support workers a nicer environment to go to, because I personally think that there's a lot of stress placed on you when you know that it's very, very difficult supporting someone in an environment where it's not a good outcome for everybody. And so, like you say, for the parents, it could probably be challenged for that period of time to be living with a child who needs their own space, would benefit from their own space, you would benefit from your space, and for a worker to be coming into that as well. So actually it's the best outcome for everybody to find a housing solution that benefits everybody, including the provider. It's a nicer environment that you can go and you can provide the support, not have the added I say stress of thinking about how can I help this family on a broader sense overcome some of the stress and anxiety that they get, because they're crammed under one roof, and they have been for a long time and need an alternative solution. So I think what you're providing is very unique. And again, I think the ability to provide different types of solutions is pretty incredible. Having Troy, and not just the tenancy and property management teams, having Troy to be able to really think creatively around the design and the development and the build of homes. also having a tenancy and property management team to work with people like the SEAL providers and the participants and families and carers, support coordinators and OTs. I think it's such a big thing for everybody when there is an SDA home for someone who has real complex needs. Everybody's life changes. You know, if someone's been living with you for 25 years and they're your child, the transition process is huge for everybody. Yeah. And so supporting people through that transition is massive. And I know you've been at weekends going and meeting with the family and talking about the process around the build and and you know, the OTs and the support coordinators. And I think working with people closely, partnering people on that transition is so important. And again, I think it's one of those things that when you're working with an award-winning tenancy and property management team, supporting that transition process from a build perspective is so critical. Because it's not enough just chucking up the bricks and mortar.
No. It's got to be specific, hasn't it?
It has to be, yeah.
So with that scenario that I've just explained to you there, we have been fortunate enough to deal direct with the family, deal direct with the participant, get feedback directly from them. But that's not always going to be the case. There's going to be SIL providers that we need to work with, and this is where the other end of the spectrum that we're talking about here, whilst we're building the homes, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, isn't it, that a lot of people are totally unaware of. So take us through this little quadrant at the top here.
Yeah, I suppose the starting point is, does any participant have home and living supports in their plan? And even if it's not SDA specific, I would encourage all participants to think about, is your current home and living arrangement working for you? If it's not, ask for a review to get some home and living supports reviewed. At that point, if you don't have home and living supports or you don't think they're adequate enough, if you think they've changed, ask for a review and connect with either your current support coordinator or a new support coordinator who specialises in doing reviews that include home and living supports, and they will ask for a functional assessment from an OT. So that referral will go through to an OT. The OT will make sure there's a plan review approved. We'll then do the functional assessment, which I believe is around about 10 hours. So they'll spend 10 hours doing a functional assessment on what your home and living supports should be. They'll then write a report and they'll send it back to the support coordinator. They might recommend, if they think that you're eligible for SDA, they might recommend a further SDA assessment be put into the plan. At that point, support coordinator will either have an SDA assessment in there anyway as part of the functional assessment, or if it's the functional assessment, they'll then ask for an SDA assessment as well. You can ask for STA or MTA in your plan, so you can get
short stay and medium stay.
Exactly, yeah. 28 days of short-term accommodation, 90 days for medium-term accommodation. Plus, you get your core supports on top of that as well, which you can tap into.
So that can help people that have got SDA in their plan for long-term SDA, but the house isn't built yet.
Yes.
So then they can get funding for short stay SDA.
Yeah.
To stay somewhere, and it could be metro, it could be regional, it could be in a holiday destination.
Yeah.
But it will get them access to housing in the short term until the long term property is built. Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be in a disabilities perspective, in a home built specifically for people with disabilities. So that could be a holiday home somewhere, and they normally call it respite housing. It's meant to be for people who need a break, or for people whose team of support coordinators, workers, they might need a break as well. So the 25-year-old that you're talking about, there might be some short-term accommodation while that person could go on holiday, so the family can take a break and have the home, or they can go on holiday themselves and know that the person's being looked after. So that might all be in the plan anyway, and that might be a way of having accommodation secured either for respite or for a medium term whilst your SDA is being assessed. Yep. And you can get those things even if it's being assessed.
Right.
Don't have to have SDA approved. It can be under assessment at that time as well.
Yeah. That
SDA assessment, it's a report, normally 50 plus pages, that then goes off from an OT via a support coordinator who gathers all of the information needed to support that report and assessment. The support coordinator is responsible for the report. That goes off to the SDA, to the NDIS. The NDIS then either approve it or reject it, and then that goes back to the participant to say your plan has been approved, and then that participant would then engage with their support coordinator saying, this is my new plan, this is what's been assessed, this is what I now have in my plan, this is what's funded, how do I go out there and try and find what's available?
Right.
And that's when, from a participant perspective, they're in the same thing as the SDA provider and the SEAL provider, where everyone's trying to find the right
Yeah.
people to go with, or
Yeah.
the right house, or the right product, or the right partnership.
And what's the sort of turnaround time on that, getting the SDA approved in the plan and getting the plan approved by the support coordinator?
Yeah, good question. So some support coordinators are saying it's taking 3 months to get an SDA assessment back, which I think is really, really fast. Some people are saying it's up to 18 months from start to finish, from when they ask for the functional assessment right the way through to getting the plan approved and sent back. Now, that might be subject to lots of reviews and variations, but that, in terms of the timeframes, sometimes the lack of consistency and the challenges around the funding process from an NDIS perspective, it makes it really hard for everybody, really. It makes it hard for SDA providers to want to work genuinely in partnership with participants before they have a plan approved, because you don't want to design a house and start thinking about where do we go out to find the land, get the investors, start thinking about the build, costing it all up until people have got it approved. But if it can take up to 18 months, why should SDA providers invest in that one and just go out and knock up what is the bare minimum standard? And that's where I think Alison's quite excited to go out and find great partnerships for you to work with in terms of the reside part of the co-living collective group of companies, because I think it is genuinely about developing what we can right now, but also developing really bespoke, great housing solutions for participants.
Is there any data out there, or data for the Australians?
Yeah.
Are you a data or a data guy?
Data,
yeah. Is there any data out there for participants that are going through the SDA assessment phase? Like, do we have visibility to say there's 3,000 people out there that are in that sort of, what should we call it, the sort of plan phase?
Yeah. So there's data on the NDIS website. There's also a demand map, so they'll do projections on what's available, who's under plan, what's being reviewed, who has been approved for certain things, what they think the projection will be in a certain local government area or region. So there's those things. There's also things out there like Home Hub, which was trying to centralise and collect all the data on how many people might need what type of housing, disability, domestic violence, etc. There's some specific disability ones. So Home Hub is spinning out into a disability home and living supports marketplace on its own. So they'll have its own set of data for WA here locally. And then you've got Housing Hub, you've got the NDIS SDA Finder. So they'll be collecting data on how many people are going to that website, what does that look like. But I think the best source of the most accurate data that you could really work off is the active home seekers that are registering through the SEAL networks and the SDA networks.
Right. And is that being captured anywhere, or is that literally word of mouth?
Yeah, it's word of mouth. Word of mouth. Word of mouth. It's all word of mouth. And again, the challenging thing, I think, is trying to work with organisations who are who have the appetite but also the tolerance to work in collaboration and partnership as well. There's a bit of a competitive collaboration amongst some of the organisations. So with the privatisation of the disability funding that's available, if you're a SEAL provider and it's a lucrative market, you're starting your own SEAL housing list, wait list. So you'll connect with participants who have SEAL in their plan, might be SDA eligible, and that's quite lucrative. So you keep your own wait list and then you go out and try and find SDA providers to work with. You don't necessarily always want to share that data, but some do. Some will get together, and so the great thing about WA is that we've got some great interagency networks. One of them's run by RISE, and there's some run by NDS WA as the peak body, where people will come together and they do want to centralise vacancies for those individual wait lists. So what they would prefer to do is, rather than put the participants on a centralised wait list, which would be the easiest thing to do, which is what Home Hub's aiming to do, and then tell people where the options are, people are more comfortable with going out and getting the options to then tell people on their own individual wait lists what's available. So that's where the partnerships with certain SEAL providers comes in really useful, and connecting with good SEAL providers who want to work collectively with other SEAL providers and interagency networks, who are open to sharing, open to working together. We have this piece of the puzzle in terms of location, you work there. If we all work collectively, there's enough of the pie to slice up that everyone should benefit. but it's if you get too greedy and you want more of the pie because it's a profit-driven, privatised market, that's when the problems will occur. And that's where the balance between the for-profit, not-for-profit organisations come in, because it's about the people who are doing things for the right reasons and do want to work in partnership with others in the sector to just make sure people get good outcomes.
Yeah. Excellent.
So there's not lots of empty homes and there's not lots of seal providers who are over-competitive.
Yeah, and hiding their participants.
Yeah.
Not
Not working with SDA providers who are providing great services because they've got their own SDA partnership.
Yeah.
So we'll keep this participant in a group home where they're not necessarily getting the right outcomes, but we need to wait until something happens where we can move them into a home where we provide supports with an SDA partner that we want to work with.
Yeah, and if we go full circle on this now as well, this is when we were talking about having the best product in the market, having the best relationships with these seal providers in the market. If housing that is being built to the standard, just the minimum standard, which is small, low ceilings, small bathrooms, more bedrooms, so 3 or 4 bedroom HPS built to the standard, it's small, it's pokey, it's cramped. This is when having the best product and the relationships is going to matter, because these seal providers are going to want to move their participants from the substandard, well, not substandard, but the minimum standard, into a higher standard property with more space. Like you said, they want to work in good places. Everybody likes a good workplace. You're going there every day, aren't you?
Yes.
So they want to work somewhere that's good, bright, open. I feel like if some of these other properties are getting filled earlier on, when people start to hear more and see more about what we do and what we've created and the people that we're helping, they're going to start moving their participants into our housing.
Absolutely.
That's the plan.
Absolutely. And that there are a bit like seal providers, we provide a great product amongst what I think is some fairly average product, although it meets standards. But there's also other great SDA providers out there as well, and I think it's knowing that there's a big pie and we can all have a slice of it, but it's making sure participants get a really great outcome.
Yes.
And I think the big thing for us is saying to people, there's choice and control in the NDIS world, not just for participants but for businesses as well, and it's about us all having flexibility to be able to offer the best outcomes from a business perspective, but more than anything it has to be driven by the participant outcome perspective. And
100%.
So if you achieve the participant outcomes and you drive a great business outcome in terms of profit, service quality, etc., I think that's the real focus. And I think for us, we've already got a great product that delivers great service outcomes. I think you've got an award-winning tenancy and property management team that are just going to love working with seal providers and participants and their families, and they're going to support people from that transition process all the way through to ongoing tenancy and property management support. I think that's fantastic. So now it's about finding the right partnerships and making things work at the right time. And I think for us, we've always spoken about, for us it's more about expressions of interest to want to work with us and us to work with you.
Yeah.
And it's not about going out and building houses, putting people in them, finding providers. I think it's more of an organic process of making things feel
long term,
like they work as a bit of magic.
Yeah.
There's a bit of magic in that. I think sometimes with business, sometimes you can be driven to force things and make things happen. And there's an element of we need to get out there and make things happen in terms of finding land and getting things built for people. There's also a bit of magic in, like you say, connecting with someone who's 25, been at home with their family, a loving family, but they're tired and they want the best for their son, they want the best for themselves, and the support workers are probably fatigued about the whole situation. And so organically, seeing that process happen organic, I can imagine for yourselves and for Troy, as the tenancy property management team, when that property is built and they move in, and that's going to feel like a really magical thing to be a part of. And it's not been a forced process.
Yeah, I agree, mate. It's there's a lot of, I speak with a lot of investors who, this is a large investment for a lot of people. We're talking $600,000-$800,000 to build one of these SDA homes. A lot of people ask me about guaranteed rental incomes, and we've seen a few people out there offering guaranteed rental incomes, which is a little bit scary because it can't be done, can it?
It can't be. No, it can't be. And I would say look into, obviously the headline, think through can someone genuinely offer me a guaranteed rental income? If they do, where's that money coming from? And then double check the small print. Because I don't think that you can offer a guaranteed rental income from SDA housing. And I think it's almost, I wouldn't say it's a false advertising, but I think there's a lot of false promises being made, not just in SDA, but across the whole NDIS world, where people are able to say, I can take you and help you connect with some social groups. But that's not always easy to do. And if the services don't follow through with that because, the car broke down or this happens or the client doesn't want to see them that week, actually you don't achieve the goal. And actually the goal for SDA housing is not just to build the house, but it's to make sure the participants have a house that's appropriate, suitable for them to live in. The SIL providers can provide SIL housing. And it's sometimes a bit like finding a needle in the haystack to do that. So I would be very cautious about people who are promising things, like a tenant who has really high complex disability requirements, that they can find you that person.
Guaranteed.
And if I can't, I will pay you a huge amount of money
Scary,
myself to do that.
It's scary.
Yeah.
We've heard of SIL providers offering head leases on these properties. What's the feedback on them? Is there appetite out there from SIL providers to take 5-10-year leases on these properties?
Yes, yeah, there is. So a lot of the SIL providers will have people on their wait lists. A lot of SIL providers are now starting to work collectively, particularly the good ones.
Yep.
So they're starting to work collectively and say, well, we have a lot of services in the east of the metro or south of the metro. Are you happy to, if we get a great SDA partner on board, we'll share that partner, and anyone can work with that partner, but it might be worth us then saying, well, if the SDA partner builds 10 houses here, 5 houses here, it makes sense for us to, rather than try and have all 15, you do 5 and we do 10, and we'll share the people on our wait list. And that's really what NDIS should look like for participants.
Collaboration.
Simple simple entry point. I want to tell you what I need, and then hopefully services will be able to navigate towards great solutions. And if you can't provide it in partnership with an SDA provider, then you should be able to say to another SIL provider that we've got some great people here that we would love to work with. However, we don't have the housing and they want to live in your area of expertise or your location of services. Are you happy for us to do a referral? And then you might be able to provide the SIL to that person.
That'd be a great outcome. Great outcome. Just before we go, let's touch briefly on SIL housing as well, because we've got SDA and we've got SIL providers, but then we've got SIL housing. What's the difference between SDA and SIL?
Yeah, so SIL really is supported independent living, and that's the support that you get to live independently, the cooking, the cleaning, help with some household tasks. So they're not, it doesn't mean paying for bills or paying for cooking for food, but it might mean supporting you to go shopping, to creating the list, to think about what you need for a meal, write the list, and then go and get the menu of ingredients, come back, help you cook it. That's what the supported independent living services really look like. The same as things like making sure that you can do household things and that you can look after yourself, take your medications, all those kind of things. Up until now, SIL housing has been that, but it's been largely in group homes. And so shared living is a different thing to SIL. You can have SIL funding but live on your own. You can have SIL funding and live in a shared environment with other people.
Like a HMO.
Like a HMO,
yeah.
Which is one of the exciting things when I was talking to you about, part of the co-living collective stuff was, organic movement. Your organic movement into SDA was a bit of a no-brainer because you already deliver a great service and a great product. That doing it over here for people with disability and designing it specifically for people with disability was a no-brainer. So people can get that SIL on their own. They could have it in your HMOs. I was talking to one of your tenancy officers today, and they do have someone with some SIL funding potentially moving into a HMO that's just applied. Phenomenal, mind-blowing. Who would have thought it? People with disability have choice and control to live where they want, and they want to live in an affordable rental HMO that meets their needs.
Yeah.
When you think about it, they could go and live on their own in a rental property for $450 and find an apartment in the city centre or up in Joondalup. Or if they want social and community connection, they want to be around other people, but they just don't want to live with mum and dad anymore, or they don't want to live with other people with disability in a group home environment, they can go and live in a HMO property, which is pretty phenomenal. And you can live with a paramedic and a aged care worker and an IT professional. And that's, for me, that's what NDIS is all about. So it's that kind of connection across the group that I get really excited about. So that's really what SEAL housing means. People are, the Quality and Safeguarding Commission, the NDIS inquiry came out and said that group homes, some of the members of the inquiry said that group homes need to be phased out because of instances over a long period of time of neglect or abuse, or people maybe just not getting the right outcomes from the service model. I would argue that some of those group homes are fantastic, but I think historically people haven't been given the choice and control to explore other housing pathways and options, like HMO, for example, and like...
Probably hasn't been available for them, has it?
Hasn't been available, no. And they've not had the funding available for it. And so I think there's a unique opportunity there to think about, when people have SEAL funding, what does that look like? And how does HMO become a bit of an option for people as well? But also, how do you provide alternative models of group housing, specifically for people with disability? So again, people might want SEAL housing in shared environments, but they might want to share those environments with people with disability, or they might not. And so it's just trying to understand, there's a huge amount of potential there, I think, in engaging with different people, because SDA is fantastic, but it only accounts for 6% of the NDIS participants. Outside of that, you've got the 94% of participants under NDIS who aren't funded for SDA, but they might have SEAL, or they might have funding to explore ILO and other bits and pieces.
So SEAL funding still comes from the NDIS, just not under the SDA banner.
Yes, yeah. And everyone with SDA is likely to have SEAL,
right.
Because you'll come with really complex needs.
Yeah.
But it might be that you have SEAL funding, but you only have light touch supports or medium touch supports. You don't have the level of complexity where you need your own built-in house with assistive technology and hoists and other bits and pieces. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about, people that are currently living in group homes. What does alternative SEAL shared housing look like? But also, what are those SEAL providers considering in terms of future innovative business models as well? Because I think there's a real opportunity for people who are currently providing SEAL homes, opportunities for them to come and work with the Co-Living Collective on designing different models of disability housing, and they don't lose the element of control and choice over their service model, but they don't always have to operate the tenancy and property management stuff on top of the support.
Yeah. And we can look after them with that.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Right. Where do we? Plenty of information there again, wasn't there?
And there's so much running through my head.
Yeah, me too. We've been chatting for an hour already.
Yeah, wow, it flies, doesn't it?
It does. I think what we're going to do, right, because we touched a little bit on HMO again there. We touched on SDA, the complexities around the tenancies, the needle in the haystack, trying to find good SIL providers so that we can partner with them, and then touch slightly on SIL. I think what we want to do, right, is catch up every 6 months, and next time we bring Alison in, we'll bring Joe in, and the four of us will sit down and we'll look at what the goals were when we first started working together and what we've achieved in that 6 months as well, because we've been working together for probably 2 months already now. And the list of goals and KPIs that we've set, and the things that we're already ticking off that list is it's quite impressive. So I think we're going to start getting some real traction soon. We've got houses finishing, we've got HMOs finishing, got SDA finishing, and we'll start seeing people transition into these homes that we're building as well. So
absolutely.
Let's do it again in 6 months, mate.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Fantastic.
Sounds good.
Thanks again, Iain.
Me.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you stay up to date with all the cash flow positive property updates.